To being unimportant, Marcus echoed, clinking his glass against Ilara's. The whiskey burned pleasantly down her throat, a small comfort amid the humiliation. The cramped embassy office felt even smaller tonight. Officially designated as a diplomatic liaison facility, the space was tucked away in the least desirable corner of the Confederation's sprawling headquarters. The lighting, calibrated for the Xanthari visual spectrum, cast everything in an unflattering greenish tinge that gave humans headaches after prolonged exposure. "Did you see Ambassador Krulfax's facial tendrils?" Ilara asked, refilling their glasses. They were practically quivering with delight when the Arbiter shut down my presentation. Marcus nodded grimly. "The Xanthari have been lobbying to have us reclassified to Class E status. They filed a formal complaint after Lieutenant Rodriguez won that strength competition last month." "Heaven forbid we excel at anything," Ilara muttered. She activated her datapad again, bringing up the sensor readings that the Confederation had dismissed so easily. The anomalous energy spikes near the Orion arm had appeared in exactly the pattern Earth scientists had predicted, a fact that should have commanded attention. A soft chime indicated an incoming transmission. Ilara swiped to accept it, revealing the concerned face of Admiral Helena Takahashi from Earth's Unified Defense Command. "Commander Wright," Takahashi acknowledged, her expression grave. "I've reviewed your report on the Confederation's response, or lack thereof." "I'm sorry, Admiral. They wouldn't even let me finish presenting the data." Takahashi's jaw tightened. That's consistent with the last 5 years of interaction. However, the situation has escalated. 3 of our deep space monitoring buoys went dark 2 hours ago. The last transmission contained energy signatures matching your findings. Marcus leaned into the frame. "Any response from the Confederation monitoring network?" "Their official statement is that our technology is prone to malfunction and there's nothing on their sensors." The Admiral's voice was carefully controlled, but Ilara could detect the underlying anger. "They've agreed to send a Class C inspection team. In 2 weeks." 2 weeks. Ilara stood up, nearly knocking over her glass. "Whatever's out there could reach the Epsilon colony in 3 days. Precisely why I'm contacting you directly. The Security Council has authorized Operation Shadowwatch against Confederation recommendations." Ilara and Marcus exchanged glances. Defying Confederation protocols could jeopardize Earth's already precarious standing. "We're deploying the U.S. Galileo to investigate," Takahashi continued, "under communications blackout. Officially, it's a routine patrol." "The Galileo is a warship," Marcus said quietly. "If the Confederation finds out, they'll what? Lecture us more sternly. Relegate us to an even smaller office." The Admiral's patience had clearly worn thin. "Commander Wright, we need you to cover for this operation from your end. Keep the Confederation representatives distracted while we investigate." Ilara considered the implications. Her diplomatic career would be over if this went badly. But if something truly dangerous lurked beyond those silent buoys? "Understood, Admiral. I'll make sure their attention stays firmly on human inadequacy." She managed a wry smile. "It's what they expect from us anyway." After the transmission ended, Marcus refilled their glasses one last time. "To being underestimated," he offered as a new toast. Ilara raised her glass. "It might be the only advantage we have left." "What do you have that terrifies a force capable of bringing the Xanthari to their knees in hours?" Admiral Soralen's question hung in the air between them. Ilara studied the ancient Aetherian's face. The silver-skinned admiral was over 900 years old by human standards, a member of one of the founding species of the Confederation. Unlike the dismissive Xanthari, the Aetherians had always treated humans with a distant, almost anthropological curiosity. "I don't know," Ilara admitted finally, "but I'd like to find out." Soralen's luminescent eyes pulsed in what Ilara had learned was an expression of cautious agreement. "The Voidborn, that's what the surviving outposts are calling them. They move with purpose. With knowledge." She produced a small crystalline device and pressed it into Ilara's palm. This contains tactical data not shared with the General Assembly. Study it, but do so discreetly." Before Ilara could respond, the Admiral glided away, her hovering ceremonial cloak barely disturbing the air. Ilara slipped the crystal into her pocket, feeling its weight like a small star. Back in the temporary quarters assigned to her during the emergency session, Ilara activated the device. Three-dimensional battle maps materialized in the air, showing the precise paths of destruction carved through Confederation space. The Voidborn fleet had bypassed vulnerable but less advanced worlds, focusing their overwhelming firepower on the most technologically sophisticated systems. But the pattern around Earth's sector was different. The Voidborn trajectories formed what military strategists would immediately recognize as a containment perimeter. They weren't avoiding Earth. They were encircling it. Her secure communicator chirped. The face of Captain Rivera of the USS Galileo appeared, his expression grim against the dim red emergency lighting of the bridge. "Commander Wright, we've made contact." Ilara's breath caught. "The Voidborn." "Negative. The Galileo encountered a damaged Zinthuri vessel near the coordinates of our missing buoys. We rescued 23 survivors." His voice dropped lower. "They're claiming they fled from a Zinthuri colony world that doesn't officially exist. A black research station in unclaimed space. That fits with the pattern," Ilara murmured, glancing at the tactical display. "What were they researching?" "They're not talking, but their ship's logs mention something called the Human Anomaly Project. Commander, these aren't military personnel. They're scientists. And they're terrified." A cold realization washed over Ilara. "They've been studying us, behind the Confederation's back. That's our assessment. And whatever they discovered might explain why the Voidborn are avoiding direct contact with humans," Ilara finished. "I need to speak with those survivors." "That's not possible. The Zinthuri ambassador has already dispatched a diplomatic vessel to retrieve them. Claims it's a Confederation security matter." Ilara clenched her fist around the crystal. "They're covering something up. Something about us." "What's our plague, Commander?" She stared at the battle map, at the careful circle the Voidborn had drawn around human space. "Change course to Proxima Centauri colony. I'll meet you there in 48 hours. That's a Confederation violation. So is a secret research program studying an allied species. Sometimes you have to break the rules to learn why they exist in the first place." The tension in the Colorado facility reached breaking point when Dr. Nexforal, the Zinthuri physicist, lunged for the vintage oscilloscope that Dr. Chen was using to analyze Voidborn energy patterns. "This primitive apparatus will contaminate our readings," the alien scientist hissed, his upper limbs extending toward the equipment. Colonel Hayes moved with surprising speed for his bulky frame, positioning himself between the Zinthuri and the human equipment. "Touch that again, and you'll lose those fancy tentacles," he said, voice dangerously calm. The Zinthuri's chromatic skin flushed deep purple with indignation. "You dare threaten a superior?" "Superior at what?" interrupted Dr. Amara Okafor, not looking up from her comparison of mythological texts. "Getting your homeworld conquered in 6 hours." The room fell silent. Even Hayes winced at the bluntness of her statement. Dr. Nexforal's translator produced a series of clicks and whistles that indicated untranslatable profanity. "You savage creatures have no concept of the technological sophistication required to lose a war." Hayes finished. "No, we don't. When humans fight, we don't rely solely on technological superiority. We adapt." He gestured toward the oscilloscope. "That primitive equipment you're so quick to dismiss. It's detecting signals your advanced sensors aren't calibrated for." Dr. Chen nodded, adjusting the dials. "The Voidborn communications use a quantum frequency that operates slightly out of phase with standard detection methods. Our older analog equipment picks up the interference pattern because it's less discriminating." The Zinthuri scientist paused, his natural scientific curiosity temporarily overriding his prejudice. "Show me." On the other side of the war room, Ilara conferred with Admiral Takahashi via secure holographic link. The Admiral's expression darkened as Ilara reported her findings from the Aetherian data crystal and a Galileo's discovery. The Zinthari were studying us, without Confederation oversight. The evidence suggests they've been doing it for decades, Ilara confirmed. The rescued scientists are refusing to speak, citing Confederation security protocols. Takahashi's holographic image flickered. We need leverage. We may have it. Ilara lowered her voice. Colonel Hayes' team believes they've identified why the Voidborn tactics seem familiar. They're using adaptive strategies that mirror human historical warfare, but with an almost textbook precision, as if they've studied our military history, but never actually fought against us. Are you suggesting the Zinthari shared human military data with the Voidborn? I'm suggesting the Zinthari may have inadvertently created a vulnerability by studying us so closely. If the Voidborn accessed their research, a commotion from the main floor interrupted their conversation. Dr. Chen stood excitedly over his equipment, gesturing for everyone to join him. We've decrypted a partial Voidborn transmission, he announced. And you need to hear this. He activated the audio. A distorted, multitonal voice emerged from the speakers, the language unlike anything in the Confederation linguistic database. But every few seconds, a perfectly pronounced human word emerged from the alien discourse. Immunity, resistance, contamination, Earth. Dr. Nexvoral's posture changed instantly. For the first time since arriving, the Zinthari looked genuinely afraid. Dr. Amara Okafor spread the ancient manuscripts across the reinforced table, their fragile pages protected by preservation fields. Representatives from 7 species leaned in, their diverse sensory appendages focused on the yellowed human documents. These 14th century accounts from Europe, Asia, and North Africa all describe the same phenomenon, she explained, pointing to specific passages. A shadow plague that preceded the Black Death. Creatures of darkness that moved like men but were not men. A holographic display alongside the manuscripts showed cave paintings from 5 continents, spanning millennia. Each depicted similar elongated figures with too many limbs. The Anasazi called them those who hunt in darkness. The Norse named them shadow walkers. Ancient China recorded the void dancers. Amara's finger traced a recurring symbol found in each disparate cultural record. This marking appears consistently across unconnected human civilizations, separated by oceans and centuries. The Aetherian historian, Televos, produced a small spherical device. It projected an image of captured Voidborn infantry, the same symbol clearly visible on their armor. By the eternal void, whispered Dr. Nexvoral. Scientific skepticism momentarily abandoned. In the adjacent laboratory, Dr. Chen and a mixed team of xenobiologists worked frantically over genetic sequencing equipment. The captured Voidborn biological sample pulsed beneath containment fields, its cellular structure constantly shifting as if refusing to be studied. There, Chen pointed to a scrolling display of genetic markers. That sequence structure, it's impossible. The Zinthari geneticist, Mextoral, chittered in disbelief. This cannot be accurate. The pattern is partially human, Chen finished. About 19% alignment with human genetic markers. Not enough to suggest direct evolution, but enough to indicate deliberate engineering or ancient contact. Mextoral concluded, professional fascination temporarily overriding species prejudice. Ilara watched the 2 scientists, enemies by politics, but momentarily united by discovery. What does this mean in practical terms? Chen looked up, his expression grave. It means they've been studying us for far longer than we imagined, possibly since before recorded human history, and given the genetic similarities. They could be vulnerable to human pathogens, Mextoral finished, just as you are vulnerable to theirs. A communication alert flashed. Admiral Takahashi's hologram appeared, her usual composed demeanor visibly shaken. Commander Wright, we've discovered something at the Jupiter Research Station archives. 30 years ago, they recovered an artifact in the outer system. The Confederation classification team dismissed it as a natural formation, but our scientists disagreed. They kept separate records. The hologram shifted to show a small, obsidian-like object covered in familiar markings, the same symbol from the ancient manuscripts, and voidborn armor. This object emitted a signal for exactly 7 minutes before going dormant. Takahashi continued. We now believe it was a beacon, or a warning. Ilara's mind raced. They've been watching us. For centuries. Why? Dr. Okafor approached, holding an ancient leather-bound journal. I think I found part of the answer. This account from a 14th century monastery describes how the Shadow Men feared human blood. Not because of superstition, but because exposure to it made them dissolve into screaming mist. The room fell silent as the implications became clear. They came to Earth before, Ilara said slowly, and something in us drove them away. The modified Confederation transport vessel, UCS Decoy, drifted in the void, its systems powered down to minimal life support. Inside the cramped cargo hold, Colonel Hayes assessed his unlikely team. 3 humans, 2 Aetherian spec ops, a Zintheri weapons specialist, and a hulking Norvarian berserker, the most unusual strike force in Confederation history. Proximity alert. Came the whispered voice of Lieutenant Kira Chen, their pilot and Marcus's younger sister. Voidborn scout ship approaching. T-2 minutes to sensor range. Hayes nodded to Trexel, the Zintheri specialist who had volunteered after witnessing the human surgeon's self-sacrifice during training. Time to play dead. The Zintheri activated the specialized disruptor they'd developed based on human EMP technology. The UCS Decoy's remaining systems shut down completely, including life support and artificial gravity. In the sudden weightlessness, the team activated their stealth suits, another human innovation that the Confederation had previously dismissed as unnecessary, given their advanced cloaking technology. Remember, Hayes said through the tactical comm, voidborn sensor technology appears based on energy detection, not mass. They'll see the ship but not us, as long as our suits stay powered down until we're aboard their vessel. Sergeant Maya Rodriguez, her arm still healing in a smart cast from her self-inflicted injury during training, secured the specialized payload to her suit, ready to deliver the package. Sir. The ship shuddered as the voidborn tractor beam locked on. Trixel's chromatic skin pulsed with anxiety, a reaction he could no longer control now that his species suppression technology was offline. How can you be so calm? He whispered to Rodriguez. If captured, they will not grant a quick death. She smiled grimly. Humanity has faced extinction-level threats before. From nature, from ourselves. Existential danger is practically our comfort zone. The Norvarian, Grak, rumbled his agreement. Humans have warrior spirits in fragile bodies. Most contradictory species in Confederation. A violent jolt signaled they'd been pulled into the voidborn hangar bay. According to intelligence, they'd have approximately 40 seconds before the enemy boarding party accessed the airlock. Hayes looked each team member in the eye. Remember, we're not here to fight. We're here to infiltrate. Get to the command deck. Plant the payload. Extract the data. Get out. The biological agent is a last resort only. The Aetherian twins, Sora and Korra, synchronized their neural implants, a process that allowed them to communicate without detectable signals. Human tactics are unpredictable. Sora acknowledged, but effective. The airlock hissed as external forces began to override it. One more thing, Hayes said softly. The Voidborn have studied Confederation species for centuries. They know your weaknesses, your tactical doctrines, but they've avoided humans, which means they don't understand how we think. He unholstered his kinetic sidearm, an ancient ballistic weapon that required no energy signature. So be unpredictable. Be human. The airlock doors slid open, revealing 3 elongated voidborn soldiers, their bodies seeming to absorb the surrounding light. Hayes gave the hand signal. The mission clock started. Operation Trojan Horse had begun. In Dr. Chen's laboratory, the debate had escalated beyond scientific discourse into something approaching philosophical warfare. The Xanthuri delegation, led by High Commander Vex Corps, stood on one side of the transparent containment field housing the modified pathogen. The Etherian Council representatives, their silver forms shimmering with agitation, stood opposite. "Your hesitation condemns billions to death," Vex Corps hissed, his tendrils flaring. "We have the means to eradicate the Voidborn completely. Your ethical posturing is a luxury the galaxy cannot afford." Elder Sorelin of the Aetherians gestured toward the containment field. "And what comes after? Once we establish that genocide is acceptable when convenient, where does it end? The Voidborn today, who tomorrow?" Ilara massaged her temples, feeling the weight of the decision. The modified human pathogen they developed could target the shared genetic markers between humans and Voidborn with terrifying precision. The lethal variant would effectively dissolve Voidborn neural tissue within minutes of exposure. The non-lethal version would temporarily disable their higher brain functions, rendering them unconscious for approximately 12 hours. "Both of you speak as if this is solely your decision," Ilara said finally. "This pathogen is derived from human biology. It's our weapon to deploy or withhold." Admiral Takahashi's hologram nodded. "Commander Wright speaks for Earth in this matter." "Then decide, human," Vex Corps demanded. "While you debate ethics, the Voidborn have conquered 7 more systems." The laboratory's alert system suddenly blared. Dr. Chen rushed to the communication terminal. "Multiple Voidborn vessels have entered the Sol system," he reported, face ashen. "They've bypassed the outer defense grid completely. Tactical displays activated automatically, showing the approaching enemy fleet. Unlike previous attacks against Confederation worlds, this assault force was massive, at least 3 times larger than any previously encountered Voidborn battle group. They're not aiming for our military installations," Admiral Takahashi realized, studying the projected trajectories. "They're targeting population centers: Delhi, Shanghai, Lagos, Mexico City." The weight of command settled on Ilara's shoulders like a physical force. "Deploy the non-lethal variant," she ordered. "Target their command vessels only." Vex Corps' skin darkened with anger. "You doom your own species with half measures." "Perhaps," Ilara acknowledged, "but we'll face that doom as humans, not monsters." The laboratory shook as the first distant impacts reached them. On the monitors, they watched as civilian defense protocols activated across Earth's cities. Unlike the Confederation capitals with their energy shields and automated defenses, Earth's protection came in the form of millions of individuals mobilizing with whatever tools they had at hand. In the streets of New Delhi, university engineering students repurposed construction equipment to create makeshift barricades. In Lagos, ancient kinetic weapons, preserved in museums, were distributed to volunteer defense forces. The broadcast showed a chaotic, uncoordinated resistance that somehow, impossibly, began to slow the Voidborn advance. Dr. Chen stared at the displays in wonder. They expected us to respond like the Confederation worlds, with centralized technological defenses they've already learned to counter. They don't know how to fight. Humans being human, Ilara finished, a glimmer of hope kindling despite the devastation. The Confederation war room aboard the flagship _Celestial Judgment fell silent as General Hayes presented the battle plan for Proxima Centauri. 3-dimensional tactical displays showed the Voidborn fleet positions alongside the seemingly vulnerable Confederation forces. "You propose deliberately exposing our flanks?" Admiral Vex Full of the Xanthuri remnant fleet asked incredulously. "This violates every principle of spatial warfare doctrine." "That's exactly why it will work," Hayes replied calmly. "The Voidborn have studied your doctrine for centuries. They anticipate your responses because you've been fighting the same way for millennia." He gestured to Lieutenant Sophia Reyes, who stepped forward. The young naval tactician had been a historical warfare professor before the invasion. "This strategy adapts the Battle of Trafalgar from Earth's history," she explained. Admiral Nelson deliberately broke with naval convention by approaching the enemy in perpendicular columns rather than the parallel line formation expected at the time. The Aetherian Admiral Sorelin studied the projection thoughtfully, and the weaknesses we appear to present are traps, Hayes confirmed. The Voidborn target command ships first. It's their consistent pattern. We'll disguise our actual command vessels as support craft while presenting decoys that match their targeting expectations. The modified biological agent had already proven effective in the Earth defensive campaign, temporarily disabling Voidborn neural functions and allowing human forces to repel the initial assault. The remaining Voidborn ships had retreated to regroup at Proxima Centauri, where they appeared to be assembling for another larger attack. This plan requires perfect timing, Vex Thal objected. One miscalculation and war always requires risk, Admiral, Hayes interrupted. Something humans understand intimately. Our entire history is defined by calculated gambles. The Xanthari's skin flushed with irritation, but he no longer dismissed the human's words outright. Earth's unexpected defense had earned humanity grudging respect. Lieutenant Chen's vessel will lead the fleet toward their flagship, Hayes continued, highlighting a small craft on the display. Her modified stealth systems should allow her to get close enough to deploy the neural disruptor. Lieutenant Kira Chen nodded solemnly. Everyone understood the mission's danger. The stealth technology was experimental, adapted from the successful Trojan Horse operation. As the briefing concluded, Admiral Sorelin approached Hayes privately. "Your species continues to surprise us," she said, luminescent eyes pulsing. The Confederation Military Academy has already begun incorporating human historical tactics into its curriculum. Hayes smiled wryly. "A bit late, but appreciated." "There is something I have wondered," the Aetherian continued. "Your people have suffered tremendous losses, yet I see no desire for revenge in your strategies. The non-lethal pathogen, the emphasis on disabling rather than destroying. Don't mistake tactical restraint for mercy," Hayes replied. "If the Voidborn had attacked Earth first, before we understood what we were facing, humanity might have responded very differently." He paused, considering his words carefully. "But being underestimated gave us time to think rather than just react. Sometimes the greatest advantage is having others believe you don't matter." The battle alert sounded. Operation Blindside was about to begin. As the newly constructed Confederation embassy gleamed in the Geneva sunset, Ilara and Dr. Chen watched shuttles from dozens of worlds descend through Earth's atmosphere. The scene would have been unimaginable a year ago. Earth as the center of galactic diplomacy, hosting the Confederation's most significant assembly in millennia. "Have you seen the curriculum for the Academy?" Chen asked, scrolling through his datapad. "They're requiring all military and diplomatic cadets to study the Earth's Second World War, the Cold War, and even ancient conflicts like the Peloponnesian War." Ilara smiled. Apparently, the Xanthari are particularly fascinated by guerrilla warfare tactics. Their military had no concept of fighting without technological superiority. A familiar silver form glided onto the balcony. Admiral Sorelin, now serving as the Confederation's Supreme Military Coordinator, nodded respectfully. "The Assembly is prepared for your address, Ambassador Wright," she said, her luminescent eyes pulsing with what Ilara had learned to recognize as pride. "The Wright Protocols have been ratified unanimously." "I still think they should be called the Humanity Protocols," Ilara replied. "I was just the messenger." "Names matter in history," Sorelin responded. "And my species has witnessed much history. What you have accomplished deserves recognition." Below them, in the embassy's main plaza, a group of Xanthari dignitaries clustered around General Hayes as he demonstrated ancient human sword-fighting techniques. The aliens attempted to mimic his movements with their tentacled limbs, creating a scene both comical and profoundly meaningful. "They called us primitive," Chen observed. "Now they're studying our history like it's sacred text." "The irony isn't lost on me," Ilara agreed. "Though I worry what happens when the novelty wears off. Will they remember these lessons when the Voidborn are just a distant memory? Soralin's expression grew solemn. That is why the final provision of your protocols is perhaps the most important. The integrated defense forces, the cultural exchange programs, these ensure we do not return to our old patterns of segregating species by technological advancement. The communication device on Ilara's wrist chimed softly. A message from Captain Kira Chen, now commanding Earth's first official deep space exploration vessel, the UES Discovery. The ship had just completed its maiden jump using the newly shared FTL technology. They've reached Alpha Centauri, Ilara announced, humanity's first official interstellar mission. Unofficial missions notwithstanding, Chen added with a slight grin, referencing the now declassified Shadowwatch operations. As they prepared to enter the assembly hall, Ilara paused at the memorial wall, a massive obsidian surface inscribed with the names of worlds and species devastated by the Voidborn. Too many had been lost before the galaxy recognized the value of diversity in approach and thought. Ready to make history, Ambassador? Chen asked. Ilara straightened her diplomatic uniform, emblazoned with both Earth's insignia and the new Confederation symbol, a design that incorporated elements from all member species. I think, she said thoughtfully, we're ready to ensure history doesn't repeat itself.